everybody. Welcome to the DIY Musician Podcast. This is Cristina. Today, we're going to be interviewing Lyndera Pinder, who I met in Hamburg, Germany, when we were both at the Hamburg Music Festival. And we met each other and we both found out we host podcasts trying to help artists. So we thought, wouldn't it be fun if I did your podcast and you did mine? So Lyndera is going to be joining us today, and she lives in the Bahamas. We're going to talk about what is it like for artists to break into the Bahamas as a music scene. What is the music scene like there? And we will also be joined by Erika Parr, who will be asking some questions as well. So let's hit it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. And yourself?
I'm doing well. And will you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Lyndera Pinder. I'm the owner and CEO of Creativity Art Center. It's a music business consulting, and right now we are offering A&R management services as well.
Yes, and you also host a podcast called Music with a Twist.
Music with a Twist, yes.
Which you had me on as a guest a few months ago. Thank you so much for doing that. And you and I actually met in Hamburg, Germany, where we both happened to just have conversations about how we run podcasts about music education and how to be an independent artist. So this worked out perfectly. I got to do yours, and now you're joining us on ours.
Yay! Isn't that fun?
I know. And then Erika, for those of you that don't recognize Erika Parr is our international queen here at CD Baby. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of talk about breaking into different regions. Erika, you and I recently went to Miami back in August or September. It was right after Hamburg. I was tired. My brain was tired. But we did a session about breaking into Brazil. Something you know a lot about because that is your background, but also you did an excellent presentation in Miami about that. So we thought, wouldn't this be an interesting conversation to talk to Lyndera about your region? And you currently live in the Bahamas, correct?
Yes, I currently live in the Bahamas.
And that is where your business is run as well.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I think I already just be really curious to know how you ended up here. How did you ended up doing what you're doing now, and what's your story with the music and art? There's always some interesting, like I'm not an artist and I work with artists, so I want to know what's your story.
Well, starting from the very top, I started off playing the piano for many years. I started off in a local church, but then I branched off to actually playing at gig places around the country. I lived on an island called Grand Bahama for quite some time. And just recently, in the last 4 to 5 years, I transitioned to our capital called New Providence. And mainly, New Providence is quite busy right now with entertainment and the live industry when it comes to music and performing. So before that, I always had this curiosity, and it started off with teaching piano and, wanting to dive a little bit more and get in a little bit deeper, into how me as being an island girl can actually take what I have and what I know away from playing and taking this and giving it to other people. So what I did, it didn't start off in the form of a podcast, but actually my search turned into like a little research paper or project for myself, and I started going to various artists that I knew in my pool and local musicians as well. And I asked them questions, hey, how do you feel about our country actually making it to bigger platforms, being able to compete with other places or other regions that actually have larger audiences, do we still want to be the little fish in the big pond, and how do you actually feel about it? And they all gave their ideas about how they would want that to go forward. And I said, I think that we should branch out a little bit more as a nation, even though we're small. Seeing that we do so well in things that are non related to music, like Olympics and so forth, and winning gold and silver medals. And, with us recently having an NBA star, Buddy Hield, who's doing very well in the sports arena. So I said to myself, we can probably get there in the music industry as well. And from that, but my podcast was born. And I started interviewing local artists, regional artists after being in a few accelerator programs, and asking the same question. What do you need? How do you think we can get there? And the persons that I interviewed, off of the podcast, off script, on script, they gave very insightful information on what they would like to see and how they would like to see it, and how we can move past the mindset of being such a small nation and actually moving into greater things.
It's
And
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
so what
from there, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, no, keep going.
Yeah, from there, I started consulting artists that I knew in my pool and actually reaching out to artists on LinkedIn as well. And from there, I noticed that most of them needed assistance, with music related things, seeing that I have a background in music, not sorry, in music, with what I do, and having a business administration degree as well. I married the two together and, made it useful.
Amazing, amazing.
Mhm.
That's a great journey. And tell us a
Thank
little
you.
bit about the current landscape of music in the Bahamas right now. What does it look like? What are the trends? What is there like a specific genre that's very popular right now or that's
hmm
blowing up?
Well, right now we have, you know, two very competitive genres per se, and that's mainly with the calypso. And knowing that we have a lot of carnival going on in most of the Caribbean regions and places like Miami and um, what's the place called? Oh, Louisiana, yes. A lot of carnival going on right now. The calypso and the reggae music and the soca music is kind of big right now in our region, and also gospel. The
Oh,
gospel, yeah, it's a competitive region. We have a lot of gospel artists that basically come out. They release singles inconsistently, but our soca artists have been really dominating and taking it to international levels.
very
How
interesting.
I just want to comment on a parallel of
Mhm.
Brazil is also a big country for gospel, but we also have the
Interesting.
Oh,
carnival,
okay.
the party, right? That goes
Yeah,
against,
carnival and
not
partying.
against, but
Yeah.
it's a bit of a duality there, right? You have, but Brazil has this beautiful mix, and I feel like being warm and close and just living better on that sense, it makes it so the art is so colorful and so mixed up.
I'm sure it
On
makes the
Yeah.
gospel more fun too, right? Because you've got
hmm
like this incentive to make fun, upbeat music
hmm
through calypso and all that, but then you also are creating gospel, which often is already very like rich and beautiful. But I'm sure that it sort of like adds this flair to it, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I've been so interested in seeing a lot of collabs, and I noticed that a lot of the artists have been, diving into collabs lately. So that's something that I'm really excited to see, how we take it as a region. And it's so exciting to hear, that just there's a similarity in Brazil as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we go a
hmm
lot for the drums and for, for that
Yeah,
bass and for that
yeah.
rhythm. And but you also have, you know, there's always beautiful mixes in Brazil, and I'm guessing Bahamas you get that too. And on that note, I would like to already talking about how you get artists in and out of Bahamas or a mix. Do
Uh
you
huh.
see this tendency that I'm seeing in Brazil right now? That the big thing right now is a lots of singles and a lot of collaborations, so you can get to be seen on your territory and vice versa. Do you see
Mhm.
that tendency happening right now? And what you would tell to artists that want to reach Bahamas and want to get there, maybe collab with one of your artists?
Yeah, well, right now for collaborations and Brazil, there is a lot of similarities, like I said, with the drums and everything being upbeat and everything being excited and celebratory. Most definitely, I do see that being an opportunity. And, we're doing a lot of networking right now through social media. And that's basically one of the main ways that you can reach out, to an artist in Brazil.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what is the, like, most popular platform currently in the Bahamas social media-wise, would you say?
Oh,
Like, is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? What is it?
yeah, it's a combination of Instagram and Facebook. Now, recently, the
Facebook.
Bahamas, yeah, there was this lady called Nilly. Oh, it's Nilly because it's very close to the vanilla wafers in
Mm.
America. Yeah, in the U.S. She's actually a U.S. artist, not really a really big one, but she made this promotional video for the Bahamas, featuring all of the features from her trip, visiting here. And a lot of Bahamian artists, from all genres, the calypso, the gospel, the rappers, and so forth, they started making collabs with her. And it really blew up over the internet, especially TikTok for the last few
Hmm,
days. Yeah, it went really viral.
very cool.
So
So
that
you
was
said
yeah.
that's sort of like so those are the platforms that you would recommend artists use to reach out to audiences,
Yes.
not only in the Bahamas but outside. Like those are the ones that are sort of people are
Yes.
gravitating to where you are.
Yes, your Instagram, your TikTok, and Facebook.
And how important is networking in the Bahamas? Like, are there specific events or
Mhm.
platforms where artists can like connect with industry professionals? Or, you have your podcast, which I'm sure is also a networking opportunity. Yeah, I mean, you said collaboration is pretty big. So like how important is the networking aspect?
Well, for right now, and I can say I'll use this opportunity to make a little promotion for myself. But for right now, when it comes to artist collaboration, we have it more or less on a national scale. It's to a point of being on a regional scale. I know that you have a lot of Caribbean regions that have union meetings, or they would have meetings where they would have convention centers, and they would all meet and talk about where we need to go next, as a country or as a region when it comes to our music, as artists, musicians, PR, so forth. But when it actually comes to the performance and the music business side of artistry, I really don't see anything happening on the arena, or I've heard anything about it. And I've been trying to put together a conference, to assist with
Oh.
that. Yeah. And as I get more information out, I'll introduce it. But the main idea was just to get that persons from the creative or music creative industry specifically. And I did start reaching out to a lot of our big name artists and producers and PR companies, just to get an idea of who is going to be interested, and how we can get other persons from the US, UK, and different continents to actually come and it be like a melting
Yeah.
pot of merging. Yeah, well, we have that opportunity, something that can happen on an annual basis, and we get that
Hmm.
opportunity to exchange and further, just like you said with the Brazilians, you have that opportunity to collab and actually
Like
produce
a
new things.
summit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a summit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking to the people that love to organize events over here. So, absolutely, when it
Okay.
comes to networking events, that is our bread and butter. What with the
Okay,
DIY
great.
musician conference, that was always what we were aiming to do was sort of build community. And you can, I think that like community networking, all of those things, no matter where you are, is so
Hmm.
important. Whether you're in a small town, small island, small whatever, big town, big island, whatever. Building a community, a tight knit group of people that can help support each other is so important. Finding those
Yes.
people, that's the hard part, right? So, like, we
Yeah.
talk about this a lot where here in the US, for example, we might talk to somebody that says, well, I live in the middle of Utah and in my hometown, nobody plays music. Well, that's just like statistically inaccurate. There's no way that there's not one person in your small town that doesn't play music. Maybe you haven't met each other. Maybe you didn't know that they play music. Maybe it's Dale, the grocery store checkout that you know every single day. You didn't even know. And so to build the community, to like put that together, it sort of becomes your responsibility as the artist, right? Or as the caregiver of the community, as it seems that you are.
Yes.
And so to build that, or what is it? If you build it, they will come. Like, you have to sort of create that avenue for people. Whether it's putting on showcases, putting on variety shows, house shows, putting on summits, putting on conferences. I think that it's a really brilliant idea, and you should absolutely do that. And if you're
Yeah.
listening and you're thinking, I would like something like that where I live, you do it. It's not that hard. You just send out an event listing for something. Find a venue. The rest will fall into place. Events aren't that hard, you guys.
Yeah, I would agree. In Brazil, showcases are huge for those connections. You know, obviously is a huge country, and music plays. You know, we know about Brazil and the music and history and what it plays with it. So we do have lots of conferences, and I see that those opportunities to actually be able to talk with each other and showcase, those open a lot of doors there for small, big, mid. There's all levels, and I have watched beautiful things happen on that when you open those kinds of doors. And it's not just huge conferences either. You're
No.
talking about the gatherings that is going to make it possible, so ideas are brewing and people are talking about it. So
It's the beginning of time.
Yeah.
We've been doing this, creating gatherings for the brilliant minds to come together. Okay, one more
Yeah.
question about when you talked about collaborating, you said that there's a lot of people doing that right now. Are there any
Yeah.
local artists that you can think of, or producers that are sort of, maybe blowing up, maybe they're a little bigger and they're more established and they're sort of known for collaborating with independent artists?
Okay, when you say independent artists, you meaning in the Bahamas or outside of the Bahamas?
Yeah, in the Bahamas, out, it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess I'm asking, is there any more
Oh,
established artists from the Bahamas that you can think of that tend to work with other artists? Like when you mentioned that there's a lot of collaborations happening.
yeah, I do know. Like I was saying earlier, we have those two very competitive genres. We have the soca calypso type music, that fits with the carnival, and then we have our gospel, and they have that same vibe and beat and everything. So I do know. I don't know if you want me to give you a few names, but there are persons in the soca like carnival area. We have our Wendy Williams. We have our Julian Believe. We actually have Wendy's husband. He actually was a part of Bahamas, and they produced a
Oh,
song
fun.
"Who Lets the Dogs Out" that was pretty
Yeah.
big in Maitland. Yeah,
Classic. That was a big one. Very cool. And
yeah.
then in these
Uh,
communities, do you find like certain types of collaborations perform better than others? Singles, albums, shows, those sorts of things?
yeah, for sure. I know recently now going with the gospel arena. I know what's her name, Karati and Ozan Jadorte. They did a collaboration. It was a really nice gospel collaboration, and I noticed that Karati, she is pretty big right now in our region. Her and Ozan Jadorte, they do a lot of collaborations with regional artists in different places. Like most recently, they had I do believe the guy is either from Barbados or Trinidad, and he's a pretty big artist in his region, sorry, country, and they did a collab with him, and he actually featured some of our Junkanoo music as
Oh,
well
cool.
in the background. Yeah, Junkanoo is something that's pretty big over here as well. But we just advertise it locally, trying to market it so it could be something advertised on a different level.
Can you describe what that is?
Jump canoe?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's very much similar to carnival.
Okay.
However, with it kind of like gives me that feel of the college band or the New Orleans, that big band feel,
Oh,
but
okay.
you get that drumming and the
Oh,
sensation of carnival soca type music, and it
nice.
has dancing as well. It almost comes alive as a big parade,
Is
Oh,
and
it
interesting.
maybe similar to
yeah,
samba, you think? Samba?
I think so. But you have groups that compete, and
Oh, I see.
they actually do competitions at
Oh,
least twice a year, and they prepare for it. And man, the costumes are so beautiful.
very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
wish I
Mm.
could
people
see
look forward
that.
to that. Yeah.
And then, I mean, you've talked a lot about those genres, but what about some of the more like typical mainstream pop genres? Is that finding its way there as well? Like, your hip hop, your R&B, your traditional pop music,
Oh, well, yes, but not really on a level where I think that it should be appreciated in
right?
that sense. Yeah, but we still do listen to it on our radio stations. We listen to it in our cars, our homes, and I
Do you
know
think
for
that
sure.
traveling? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think traveling bands that are coming in from outside that want to perform in the Bahamas that do perform those types of music could find shows, could find an audience?
Yeah, for sure. I know there's a few places in our hotel industry for sure.
Okay.
In the Bahama Hotel Atlantis. And then there's this really cool spot called Island House. I don't know if you're familiar with Albany. It's owned by Tiger Woods. Now he brings in a lot of artists, and it's like a very elite community based
Mm.
area. And they bring in a lot of artists. Sometimes we hear about them coming, and sometimes we don't. But some of them, actually perform to those small elite groups, and they also do a lot of recording there. But yeah, once you have that community, we do have a community for the indie pop and the rock. I wouldn't say that it's so much in the hotels. No, wait,
Mhm.
we did have Maroon 5 come here in, I think, I think that was December.
So it's
Yeah,
not
it was
as frequent.
December, and well, of course we know that Grammy Award winner. What's his name again? The African guy. Oh, Claire, and I listen to his music all the time. Yes, he
Mm,
was just here. He was just here a few months ago.
cool.
Yeah, so
Um,
mhm.
I would, can I just compliment, just asking what you're talking about? I imagine that tourism has a little bit of a play. How is the tourism makes it better or worse when it comes to be an artist in the Bahamas? Because I imagine it will give you some kind of, it will be seasonal, but then it's gone. How does that work to help the scene, or it doesn't help the scene?
You mean as a part with tourism actually assisting artists?
Well, I imagine that you do have a lot of tourism, right? Is a big
Uh
part
huh.
of it. And I
Uh huh.
imagine that with the flux of people, you do have nights where there's more music going on and there's more places to play. And then all of those
Mhm.
people are gone. And it's,
Mhm.
I'm curious to know how you can artists navigate that scene with the tourism playing at home.
that's an
Oh,
interesting
okay.
question. Like, how does
Yeah,
the ebb and flow of an audience shift through the tourism cycle?
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we have been trying to remedy with that, as it pertains to our two major hotels on the capital here in Nassau, Bahamas, Bahama and Atlantis. And during the slow periods when it pertaining to local artists, we have a lot of clubs and bars and restaurants that have been usually hosting emerging artists and artists who have been in the game for quite some time. And they give those, if I can think off the top of my head, there's about 3 to 4 spots that artists can actually lock into. Most of them are restaurants and bars where they can come and perform and actually have that opportunity to show their live music to an audience that is not So tourist. Yeah, because we know for sure that is a crutch, like a crutch or something that could be, a hindrance to the market of artists. And
Mhm.
I've noticed that recently one of our very popular bands, the Essence Band, they've been actually going to events overseas in the US. I think it was NAM. Yeah, most
Mhm.
recently they posted on their page that they went to NAM, to try and get more experience and try to get more bands to come over and play in our country as well.
So
And
there
I
is an
like the
import. Like, it's
yes,
not just
yes,
export. Yeah.
yes. There is an import. Yeah,
That's awesome.
it could be a little bit more, but I see it
Mhm.
growing and I can see the hunger and
Mhm.
artists and bands actually and musicians as well actually emerging and putting themselves there out a little bit more than they would necessarily.
Yeah, and that's sort of the hope of this episode too, is to encourage those
Mhm.
artists that are wanderlust artists that want to get outside of the US and play
Mhm.
outside regions. Like,
Mhm.
go ahead and forge that path, even if there
Yeah.
are only 3 or 4 hotels that are opening up positions for you to perform at, figure out where they are, reach out to them. I do have some questions about. I think that, the way that we all handle ourselves does vary country to country. So, like, I've talked to
Mhm.
people that live in Canada that say the way that they promote themselves is so much more subtle than Americans,
Right.
or like the way that they network is so different that it's almost like Americans almost come off super aggressive when it comes to marketing and all that stuff.
Uh,
Is there anything cultural that you would say people that are coming in from the outside that want to come perform should be sensitive or aware of, that maybe changing the tone of which you approach trying to book these shows or approach trying to book radio placement or anything like that?
oh, can you repeat the last part for me, please?
Yeah, I was just saying that, we often have a tendency to go into a room with our own objective in the tone that we know, right? And so
Mhm.
it sort of varies country to country how that tone is perceived. And so, is there anything cultural about the Bahamas that anyone that's coming in from the outside should be aware of when they're trying to book the shows, or they're trying to book, a radio placement, or just, to try to help to break in, that any
Uh,
sensitivity, anything that we should be more aware of, that so we're not bulldozing a conversation, or we're not coming in, guns blaring, like, we're here, pay attention to us, you know what I mean?
yeah. I actually had the opportunity to read this book, and talking about that same thing that you spoke about, the cultural differences. And what I've noticed is in our country, when you have artists that are trying to come in or musicians and so forth, and they want to perform, it's usually the safest thing is to go through a PR or production company. And I don't know if it's like that in either of your regions, but with that, excuse me, once you go through the PR or promotional companies, they have that opportunity to give you all of the contacts and everything that you need, straight foot and flat foot. Because if you try to do it on your own, worst case scenario, they're going to think that you're spamming them.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, if you're not a part of that community, or the person that you contacted is not actually a part of that community, it's going to be very difficult to penetrate because it is difficult on a regular basis, if you don't have that tight knit community with navigating even as a local artist.
So a lot
So
of our
yeah.
artists are indie artists, that may not
Mhm.
have publicists, or they may not have managers. How
Mhm.
would you recommend they go about trying to book a show, or book a, yeah, to book something?
Oh, that's a pretty interesting question. When it pertains to indie artists and pop, you said pop, right?
No, they're of all genres, but I think that the majority of the artists that we work with generally either don't have a publicist, or
Uh-huh.
some do, and plenty do. But like, I don't have a publicist, and if I want to go play, who would I reach out to? How would I go about that? Even as maybe an established artist in the U.S. trying to make it out there. without those resources?
Well, I've noticed recently, and I'll give you two answers. I've noticed recently that a lot of persons have been coming through producers and actually through the studios. So, actually, when they come over and they want to make a new song, I'm not remembering the name of the artist right now, but I know there was an artist particularly. She was looking for a studio to make some new music, not having that opportunity or access to any of the PR or so forth. And she just went to a local restaurant and started asking questions at the bar.
Yep.
And the bartenders were able to assist her and give her guidance. And from there, she was able to record the song in the studio with the producer that they named specifically. Now, of course, you have those persons that you would go to immediately, or everyone would know, like, okay, you play this style of music, go here. But I know for sure with the indie pop music, I'm trying to remember the studio is called the Sanctuary for sure, and the same Albany community that I was telling you about that's owned by Tiger Woods. And there's also another place called Island House. I've seen it before where they pull up to a restaurant and bar and started
Just
asking
OG.
questions.
Very old
Yeah,
school. Yes. Old
yes,
school
and that's
networking.
basically how the networking is over here, by word of mouth. And once you get those conversations going, it's pretty straightforward from there. I've never really seen it happen on a social media platform per se, or
Hmm.
let's go to this specific place or not. Because, like I said, if you come and you're direct and it's not that face to face interaction, you're gonna be looked at as a spam. I know for
Interesting.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I heard this guy who does sound engineering. He said that, oh, this artist contacted me, and I don't know if he's real. I don't know if it's a phony or not. And as the artist kept reaching out to him, and they actually made that connection, and he actually, perceived it to be something that was real. But before it was just like, I don't want to be spammed or anything. So I know for sure in our country we're very traditional, and if it's not really so much word of mouth, or if persons have not gained that trust
Yes.
immediately, yeah, you kind of get them, like pushing back. Yeah,
That's
so
exactly
it's
the sort
almost,
of answer I was hoping to hear about, because
yeah.
that's exactly the sort of thing that I would never think about,
Hmm.
and would absolutely be the person that reaches out to an artist that I like in whatever town they
Hmm.
live in and say, "Hey, I
Hmm.
really like your music. I'm coming into town. I'd love to play a show together." Like, to me, that's traditional networking, but what
Yes.
you're saying is that could be perceived as spammy, that could be perceived
Yeah,
as all these things. You have to sort of build trust.
you definitely
You don't
do.
just reach out to a stranger and ask for something. Like, you actually have to build a connection. And so I think
Yeah.
that's really great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, that's why, going back to what we said earlier about the whole having networking opportunities like summits and little workshops and things pertaining to, artists and band directors or bands or musicians, actually having that opportunity to meet and
Mhm.
getting the mixing and mingling going on, that kind of works better. Now, I'm sure there may be people out there that does it, but they're really hard to find. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're working on an opportunity then to make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, that makes the event that you're talking about building even more important, to sort of build
Hmm.
opportunities for people from outside and from inside to meet each other, build those
Hmm.
connections, build those networks. Um, cool. I just had one more question for you, which is, what
Yeah,
do you
sure.
sort of see as the future landscape of music in the Bahamas? Like,
Uh,
what's on the horizon?
well, on the horizon, and I've been noticing it. And I know this touches a little bit on what we spoke about, Christina, when I interviewed you on my podcast. Now I know for sure with artists, and I don't remember the exact question what I did ask you, but I know you said something about every artist knowing the journey of where they would like to go and what they would like to achieve from
Hmm.
everything, and the whole experience of what their outcome is. But for me, I'd like to see artists, get a little bit away from just performing or looking for the next gig or the next hustle or the next dollar, and actually get into the royalties, the music licensing, and actually having that opportunity to know how to use the software like Chartmetric, and putting
Hmm.
themselves out there on an international level. Going to conferences. If it's not a conference, a summit. If it's not a summit, it's some way of not just making the Bahamas, music more marketable, or
Right.
just branding themselves in a different way, so that they can have that experience that takes their brand, and not so much their brand, but us as a country to another level. And I've been seeing most recently that a lot of them have been doing a lot of award shows, but not so much, of the music business mindset. Now, I don't know if
Mm.
it's because of not having that lack of knowledge of what I would need, or thinking that it's too expensive,
Mm.
or it may be too much. But like we were discussing before, you can go at your level or your own pace and find something, that works for where you are in the music business, and then branch out branch out to something. It might not happen in the first year, the second year, it might happen in the fifth year,
Right.
and so
So,
forth. But yeah, you just keep building and building and building away from what's comfortable, away from
right.
your local market,
Hmm.
away from, oh, I just got about, but what was this recent thing? 5,000 streams on Spotify. Okay, well, what's next? What are you gonna
Yeah,
do with that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. So you're basically
Mhm.
saying you'd like artists to empower themselves more,
Yes.
with
Mhm.
education, with the mindset of growth, with
Yes.
recognizing that, yes, you can play the local pub every week, but what are you doing to build yourself outside of that if that's your goal?
Yes.
So yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that that sort of speaks to what you're educating artists about online, through your podcast, also through the work that you're doing. It's certainly what we do here is trying to give artists the tools to lift themselves out of
Mhm.
whatever constraints they feel they're having musically, or with their marketing or whatever, but also try to build a path that might be further out than what you're comfortable with. I also
Yeah.
think there's another side of that, which that is that not every artist wants to just not every artist wants to go beyond this. Like, I think a lot of us
Mhm.
can find comfort, and that's okay, and to say, I would like to be a local musician, and I'm not too worried about touring. I'm not too worried about expanding my market. That's a fine goal to have. But what you're sort of discussing is maybe locally where you are, hoping that those artists can like at least access those tools and
Yes.
learn more and educate themselves more
Yeah. I
on.
think that I think it's mainly, not knowing where to look. I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest issue. Yeah. I would, because I do see them making attempts. Trust me, I do see them making a lot of attempts. And it's like, where do I go? What's next?
Mhm.
I know that in the past 2 to 3 years, we did have about a handful of new music management companies that have emerged, and I was really excited to see that, and I'm not discouraging those DIY artists as well, but it was an encouragement to actually see, the artist management be something that go to a scale of something that you've never seen before.
Mhm.
It's
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
what I see that you're doing is like some artists will not even see there is a path forward, that there's
Mhm.
more to
Yes.
do. There's a bridge to
Yeah.
cross if you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
show them that way. And it's a little saddening because if you do have that potential and you might be able to reach whatever you want to reach, but you don't even know that possibility exists. Or it's really pretty what you're doing, because what you're doing is like, hey,
Yeah.
there's this path, whatever you're going to take or not, but there's many others that you can take to monetize your music, make more money, get seen, collaborate, and go beyond, your walls. So.
Yeah.
I think too,
Yeah,
it's like
most definitely.
demystifying the path as well, because similarly with here, there's so much emphasis on the star, on the breakout star, the person who, gets signed to whatever huge major label, and they're the top 40 artists, the Billboard star.
Mhm.
There's so much focus on that in the music industry, period, on how many streams do they have, how many on the numbers of it, that it can be really mystifying for artists to figure out how to get there, because in their mind they're thinking, oh, it's impossible, or this is a 1 in a million opportunity, and you don't think about all the other steps and all the other opportunities you could have along the way. So even if you don't make it to that, like Ariana Grande, whatever, like top of the, I don't know why that's the one I chose, because I've literally never listened to her music, but like whoever is in the top of that 40, there are so many opportunities for artists along the path that you don't need that. Like, honestly, who cares about those people? You don't need that to be your career. You want just to have an exciting career that grows you as an artist, that you don't feel stagnant creatively, where you're constantly being pushed. And I think it was David Bowie said, you should feel uncomfortable. And that is a really good, that's like my motto, is you should feel uncomfortable. No matter what in life, you should always feel pushed, to try something different, even if it's super uncomfortable. So that's, yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking about all of this. I think that this is a really great conversation to have. I'd love to keep opening this up with you, Erika, too, with other regions.
Yeah.
I think artists probably are, always looking for new places to go. It sucks touring here in the US, and we're definitely not a US podcast. So we had a subject recently about touring, and I recommended Europe and like every other place but here. So let's keep getting people moving outside and checking out new regions. And I'm so glad we got to meet.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and let's keep the conversation going. Tell us more about this event.
Yes,
Yes,
even if
I
it's still
will.
percolating.
Yes, most definitely. And it was a pleasure. It was really a pleasure.